You're listening to the Very Refreshing Podcast with Dylan Hamar and Alek Jetzel. It's delicious. It's very refreshing.
All right. Welcome all. Welcome one, welcome all. Welcome back to the Very Refreshing Podcast. This is episode 5. My name's Dylan Hamar, and I'm here with my good friend,
Alek Jetzel.
Mr. Jetzel. And in the last episode, we talked about video games, or we gushed about video games, rather, for a while.
Yeah.
I think that episode was close to like an hour and a half.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that was quicker than I would have thought.
I know, it goes quick.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun. So we thought would be a great topic to follow up with would be collecting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about collecting now. We've mentioned in previous episodes that you and I both not only come from a different background, but you and I have our own set of hobbies. And what's funny about that is we both collect different things.
Yep.
Right? Now, what would be great is for anyone wanting to learn about the hobby of collecting, whether it be sports things or fashion, or in my case, digital media or, nerdy stuff. We can talk about that. But yeah, to kick us off.
Yep.
I want to talk a little bit about my collecting.
Yep.
Which I am a very long time collector of video games, toys, movies, and some of that has spilled on to you as well. You and I have a lot of really fun days where we go thrifting, we go to pawn shops. We're always looking for movies and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I've been collecting for a very long time, and you have seen that. You've seen what I have.
Oh, yeah.
And my collection's pretty ridiculous at this point, and it spans across video game consoles, video games for different consoles. I have lots and lots of toys. I have memorabilia. I have movies. It's gotten out of hand.
Now, just to kind of help lead or direct, when you say toys, can you explain what that? Because I see I'm getting a lot of Power Ranger stuff on my Instagram feed right now, and I see a lot of dudes who have the old school Zord, like the Zords with all the different. You have like the Tyrannosaurus and the Triceratops, and they all like transform and put together, right? So I end up scrolling through that a lot, dudes who have these old Zords collections. But when you say like your toys, can you just describe a couple of the things that are in that collection and like, what that's about?
Absolutely. I do collect a lot of Power Ranger stuff. I have a lot of the original 90s figures, when Super Sentai came to America as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they had the classic head flipping, where you could go from a helmetless Jason or Tommy or Trini or Kimberly. And
it had like a little trigger on the back, and
it would flip, and then they have their helmets
yeah.
on. Which is funny because you really didn't see a lot of suited helmetless Power Rangers ever.
It was only like in the finale episode where they're all looking up at Zordon with pride.
Yeah. I do that. I collect a lot of Star Wars stuff. In terms of like, I collect a lot of horror movie figures as well. A lot of old Twilight Zone stuff, and really just things from my childhood that I couldn't afford to have. Like I've had moments in my life where I've had dates come over and they think I have a son or something because they see my room and they're like. And I'm like, no, this is where I sleep.
Yeah.
Because my room is very, very much filled with things that I could have only dreamt about having as a kid, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm surrounded by a lot of things I love. And I think for me, that's what collecting is all about. So yeah, Star Wars, horror, Power Rangers, Twilight Zone, video game toys like Castlevania and Death Stranding, I have tons of Resident Evil figures from the 90s as well, like the late 90s, early 2000s. And yeah, my video game collection is not just US. I have tons of Japanese games like imported from Japan. My physical movie collection, while it's not as impressive as some other people out there, I'm at over like 1,000 movies physically now. Mm-hmm. So much so that I've had to start like taking inventory of what I have because I've gotten duplicates more times than I can count. I usually just give those away. But the reason I love to collect, and just to be clear, I'm not a speculator. Now, there's
Okay.
a difference between collectors and speculators. Speculators are people that buy things for the purpose of they are going to go up in value and that person will profit in some way.
Okay. Yeah.
You see this a lot with people that, and it's not just exclusive to like toys or video games or whatever. People speculate in real estate.
Yeah.
People speculate with cryptocurrencies,
Cars.
People speculate, and a lot of times they're left holding the bag because
Yeah.
it's never really what we assume. Because people don't want to pay more than they have to for something. Now, sometimes that is a necessary evil.
Yeah.
There have been games that I've spent several $100s on or whatever the case might be. However, I don't want to give those people my money, and I am certainly not a speculator. I am not someone that buys things with the intention of selling it later. I don't care to make money on my collection. I don't care. I buy things because I love those things. I love being surrounded by those things. And yeah, so a lot of nerddom stuff. I'm not talking modern nerddom like pops or anything like that. Like I like collecting things from my childhood,
Yeah.
from the 90s, or just things that sort of correlate to the hobbies that I hold currently.
Yeah.
And you are also a collector,
Yes.
but on sort of a different side. And I feel like there are also a lot of speculators in your circle.
I think especially in like the modern like social media era, my collection might be the most prone to speculation, right? And
Why
to
is that?
resellers. So I am what people call a sneakerhead, right? But I have a very, very different what's the word? Not psychology, philosophy on collecting sneakers, right? And yeah, if you've seen, if you are, aware of the sneakerhead culture, people are buying in droves. You've probably heard the term bot, right? They use bots to buy the newest Nike or Jordan release only so that they can resell what retails as a $150 shoe for $500, right? That's going on like crazy. I'm a lot along your line where I only buy the shoes that I want to wear, right? There's been once or twice where I have bought a pair of shoes thinking maybe I could resell them and maybe that would be my new career path. And then I realized, oh, the reason I was able to get that shoe for retail pretty easily is because not very many people are going to want to rebuy it, So I just made the decision. I'm just going to buy shoes that I want to wear, buy shoes that I think are cool. And that has led me into a couple corners of sneakerhead dumb that I think people would be upset at me about. And it is, you ready? Here's the hot take. No, not only, okay, I do wear them. But that's not even the hot take.
Let's go.
I'm not a fan of Jordans.
I don't know if I've ever seen you wear a pair of Nikes in my life.
So,
And I've only known you for a few years, but you're very much an Adidas guy.
that's true. So that's thing number one you should probably know is that I am all in on that 3-stripe life. I've gone Adidas. And the reason being, so I've lived 2 other places besides the United States, right? I lived for a couple of years in Argentina. And then when I was finishing up my junior year of college, I lived for about 3 months in Germany, which is the birthplace of Adidas. And in both of those countries, for some reason, there's obviously Nikes and everything else there, but for some reason, there's like this cultural tie to Adidas. Probably because Adidas is from Germany, but in Argentina, I saw that the same, right?
Would you say that a lot of it has to do with soccer?
Definitely. Now, the national team in Argentina, they're an Adidas team, right? So there's 3 stripes on their jersey, right? The classic blanco y celeste, like the white and light blue Argentina jersey, has been for a long time and will continue to be a 3-stripe shirt, right? So there's this like cultural tie that I almost kind of fell in love with, and I said, you know what? From here on out, I think I'm going to be an Adidas guy, right? And not only now, I have bought a pair of Nikes since then, but the majority of my collection is Adidas, right? But like I said, I'm almost kind of anti-Jordan, which a lot of people would be really upset at me for. Because those shoes that do get bought up and resold are the retro Jordans, right? And if you're talking about sneakers and sneakerheads, the Jordan is the ultimate sneaker, right? There's that Ben Affleck movie that's coming out right now about it.
Air.
About the story of Nike getting a hold of Michael Jordan and selling that shoe. I just don't subscribe to that, which I think a lot of people would be upset at me for.
Would you say that that's mainly because you are not a fan of the shoe itself, or is it because you're not a fan of how subscribed to it actually is, right? It's like not necessarily a contrarian mindset, but you're like, I want to go against the grain and do what the opposite of what everyone else is doing. What do you think it is about that makes you want to not follow the trend of being a Jordan collector?
I think it is a little bit of contrarian, like you mentioned, right? Like I've sworn my allegiance to Adidas, and mostly because I hope one day they'll find me in whatever capacity and get me a job, right? I really want to be a part of that. But also, I'm a big basketball fan, right? And I love basketball shoes, right? I have a lot of sneakers. I haven't bought a pair of like wear around sneakers in a while. The shoes that I buy a lot right now are shoes that I can hoop in, right? And when Jordan's shoe came out originally, it was a basketball shoe. And the ones that come out now granted, they do have like the Jordan 36s and 37s recently that are meant for hooping. But the Jordan 1s, 3s, 5s, all those ones that are coming out now aren't built for hooping, right? They're built for streetwear. They're now a streetwear shoe, right? And part of me feels a little bit jaded towards that, where I'm like, it's a hoop shoe, right?
It lost its identity.
Yeah,
in a way,
it's
right?
a hoop shoe, and you should be able to buy a pair of Jordan 1s and go hoop in them, right? The technology has advanced quite a bit, right, since then. So you probably wouldn't want to, you wouldn't want to hoop in what Jordan was hooping in. But part of me is like, man, I feel like once it became a streetwear shoe instead of a hoop shoe, that's where this whole culture of buying and reselling, and we've got the Jordan Dior that's like $1,000 shoe, and that's okay, but I miss it being a hoop shoe. I really miss it being a hoop shoe. So the Jordans that I do have are hoop shoes, right? I have the player exclusive like Luka or Russell Westbrook that have their signature shoe with Jordan. Those are the ones that I own, right? But I don't have a pair of Jordan 1s or 3s or any of those iconic shoes. I don't have any of those. And so a lot of people probably wouldn't even consider me a sneakerhead because I've avoided those, which is crazy.
That's so interesting. You sort of just mentioned a third category of collector, right? Because in my world, these three also exist. You have speculators, you have status collectors, and you have for the love of it collectors, right? There are speculators that obviously want to turn a profit. They're going to buy something and then they're going to sell it for, it's going to be marked up. You have the people that boast about their collections, right? I very much have a collection, and I know you have a collection that we could boast about if we really wanted to. Like, you could brag about how many pairs of Yeezys you have, which is very much a status shoe.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that you got them because of the status. You got them because you like them.
Yeah.
And you're a Kanye fan. Yeah. Right? So it brings us into that third category, for the love of it. We could very much brag about the things that we have, and I'm sure most would expect us to do that on this episode. And we could get into some of our favorite or most treasured pieces of collecting, or maybe our favorite stories of collecting, or whatever the case is. But the reality is that you and I love being surrounded by the things that we love. I go into your office. You have an office in your house. And you have your desk and you have your workstation, and right behind you, you have a rack with all your favorite shoes on them. Yep. They are literally like, I want to say they're like a foot away from where you sit every day. Yeah. And the reality of that is that you are surrounded by what you love. You don't get to lunchtime and turn on a stream and say, hey, look at what I have. You are just sitting in a room with the things you love, and that's the end of it. Right? Yeah. So what I want to also know, coming from your world, shoes are fashion. Now, shoes are practical. Yeah. But the majority of the world does not play professional basketball.
Of course.
So when we're getting into basketball sneakers or like you said, shoes to hoop in, shoes to hoop in and shoes to poop in. When you get into that, now, if it's not a status thing because shoes are a fashion statement, what's the point? Why do you have shoes?
Yeah.
That third being surrounded by it, I love it. It's something I just love.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that.
That's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm trying to, like, which I haven't thought of. I'm trying to think of, like, what's my origin story of, like, liking sneakers, you know? And I didn't come up in, like, you know, there's a lot of kids that come up getting cool sneakers. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of, you know, that's something that their parents love and they pass it on to them, right? They're getting Jordans and cool shoes, you know, growing up.
And like you said, your dad is also very into fashion.
Yeah, he is. Now, that wasn't necessarily like what I came up in. Like, I would go to Famous Footwear with my mom or Kohl's, and I'd get a new pair of sneakers for the school year, right? And I don't remember what those brands were. I like really don't remember what they were, but I do remember at some point going, those blue and orange shoes are my favorite, and those are the ones that I want. And this is a funny story that I don't remember until now. I remember going to different stores, right? And my mom being like, try this one on, try this one on, try this one on. And none of them spoke to me the way that blue and orange pair did. I thought they were the coolest. And I remember my mom was hesitant because they were the more expensive pair, right? And I kept going, no, I want the blue and orange. I want the blue and orange. And I remember my mom going, now, are you telling me you don't like this one because you don't like it, or because you want the other one more? Right? You know? And I always told her, no, I actually don't like this one. And I think I was fibbing to her a little bit, and I just wanted that blue and orange pair, right? Finally, my grandpa broke down and kicked her a little bit of extra cash so she could get me the blue and orange ones, right? He was always spoiling me growing up. And maybe that's like the initial part of it. But I'm trying to think at what point did I say, I want shoes? Usually
it comes from people having freedom.
That's probably what it was, right? When I was in college, college is like an interesting experience for a lot of people, right? And for me, it was too, because I went up and I started seeing all these different people with different backgrounds. And at one point, like my freshman year, I went like, wow, look at all these beautiful people that dress a certain way and have a certain style. And I didn't really feel that about myself, right? And maybe that's where it came from, right? Like I was in college, and so when I had a little bit of spare cash, I'd go to Ross and find a cool pair of shoes. You know what I mean? And that's probably the majority of my shoes at the very beginning came from Ross, right? They were shoes that were originally, when they came out, $150 shoes that I was getting for 30 and 40 a pair. So that's probably where it like started. I had a little bit of freedom. I had a desire for self-expression, right? And even though it wasn't like tied to fashion, it was tied to, this is a way that maybe I can stand out, right? With a pair of pink shoes that I know no one else is going to have, right? And so that's really interesting to think about. But at a certain point, it really turned into hoop shoes, right? Shoes that I can like play in.
Things that are, actually practical.
Exactly, right? Because I remember having a pair of hand-me-down Hyperdunks, Nike Hyperdunks, right? And they were burnt orange, right? And I liked them so much. They were hand-me-down from my dad, and he bought them because they were the University of Texas burnt orange, right? And that's where we're from. We're from Texas. And he gave those to me, and I was like, these are cool. They're burnt orange. They speak to like my background. But then at a certain point, they started to wear down, and I was like, now I get to go pick out my own pair of hoop shoes, right? And really laboring over, which pair do I get? Which pair is the one that I'm going to show up to at the rec center and like put my best foot forward, literally, with this shoe that I get, you know? So that's an interesting thing to think about that I haven't really thought about before. Like, where did it all start? This might be an easy question for you to answer with your collection, but at what point did you stop? I'm going to use the example of toys, but this applies to everything. At what point did you stop going, I'm buying these to play with as my source of entertainment as a child, and I'm buying these because I love them and want to have them around?
So I'm not afraid to admit this. For me, So I grew up going to the flea market,
Mm.
and I
Which is a phenomenon, not phenomenon, but like an environment that not a lot of people know about, right? Because it's a California thing, not specifically to California, but it's something that California kids know about. Because I don't really have an experience with the flea market.
well, yeah, because I know you're from Texas, but in Idaho specifically, in Boise, we get like one a month, and it's very lackluster. It's a lot of fishing and hunting stuff. Whereas like I would go to the fairgrounds in Porterville, California, and they would have video games and movies and CDs and all these things that things like arcade cabinets, or then you can get practical stuff like t-shirts and sun hats and like anything you could imagine. And it was special because you had these people that were selling things, these random families. And then there were families like that, because California has a lot of like Mexican people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a part of my upbringing that was very strong. Like there would be Mexican families that are selling really good food that they made.
The tamales, dude.
Yeah, dude, tamales. Yeah, like so freaking good. But I don't know. I really liked it. It almost like in what I was saying, like I'm not afraid to admit this, in my adult life when I did get that freedom, because I grew up very poor. That's why I have the things now that I didn't used to have. To me, for a long time, it was like therapeutic to buy the things that almost like, I mentioned in the Seinfeld episode, the one about Seinfeld, no, whatever we call it. I mentioned in the Seinfeld episode that a lot of people need closure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in my mind, like getting the things that I thought were impossible was like a way for me to like cut the cord from maybe some bad thoughts or bad experiences or bad memories. It's kind of like, no, I am capable, or I'm able to get the most out of life that I only dreamt of. And it's very possible.
Okay.
Right. So it was like a very therapeutic thing. And I've actually had to rework my psychology nowadays to slow down.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about space. It's not about just space or money, but to me, it's also about my mindset.
Yeah.
You know, that's how a lot of people turn into hoarders, is because
they ruin their finances.
1000%.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I need to slow down. And I took a lot of big leaps. You know, I mostly stopped collecting sealed stuff.
Okay.
Because that's a whole psychology on its face. You know, it's like I opened up some of my toys, which my friends at the time were blown away by that. They're like, what are you doing?
You just ruined the value of it.
Yeah, but if I don't have the intention of selling these things,
Yeah.
you know, or like video games, like I understand there's a huge sealed market out there, but it's like, I want to play these games.
Uh-huh.
Well, you could emulate. It's like, no, I want to play on the original hardware.
Yeah.
If I have the hardware and I have the game, I want to play it. So for me personally, a lot of it was, again, it's like feeling in my brain that life is everything that I dreamt it could be. And on top of that, it was sort of like therapy for me, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm around all these things that I really love, and my collection is super big. However, I've had to really work on my brain and how I approach collecting. And nowadays, when you and I go out to hunt movies, because I collect a lot of movies.
Yeah.
I don't just buy stuff anymore. Back in the day, I'm like, oh, a $2.99 Blu-ray. I don't care what the movie is. I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is Rampage with The Rock. I'm going to buy it. Even though I'm never going to watch that movie. It's like, no, now I only buy the things that I really, really, really want, and the things that I intend on watching.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to get to, because when you have the money and the time to do things, it's hard not to go overboard.
Yeah.
And I've been there.
Yeah.
I've gone overboard, right? Like, again, there have been games in my collection that I've spent like 500 plus on.
Oof.
Yeah. Crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
what kind of, if I can ask, right? So I know that, like you said, going after that thing might have been therapeutic for you because you could capture it, right? And that whole psychology of, now I've got it, right? I've gotten what I was chasing. Can you take me through? So, spoiler, I've never spent more than $250 on a pair of shoes, which is also kind of wild for a sneakerhead to say, because sneakers can get up into $500-$600, right, depending on the shoe.
Well, that's because those people are feeding the speculators.
There you go.
You don't do that.
Yeah. So I don't do that. But what I'm trying to ask is, what's the mind process? What's the thought process of justifying buying a game for $500? Like, can you remember the things that you were telling? Because $500 is $500. It's hard to justify paying $500 on anything. What was the thought process of you justifying being able to pay that for a video game? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot or like condemn your behavior, but I'm just kind of curious about it.
No, it's to be completely honest, it's impulsivity. And that's something I've also had to work on. I've had to rearrange my priorities, because not to sound like a jerk, I make a good living. Okay. So the reality is that I have the freedom to do those things if I want to.
Yeah.
But the question is, do I really need that? And I don't think life should be based around needs alone. But like, when you have it's like, why would I buy this $500 variant when I could spend $150 on the exact same game, but it just has a different box, or a different set of screws in the cartridge, or if it's something that's like,
does it get down to that kind of nitty-gritty detail to determine a price?
Oh yeah,
that's crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like for cartridges, there's like, there's like the 5 screw, or like I think it's the 3 screw when it comes to like NES games, and like it gets crazy. But I could just emulate these games. It's like, what value does this bring to my life?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is the things that I love in my collection the most are not the things that cost me the most money. So I will go out on a limb, and I will tell people listening to this right now, the more expensive something is does not inherently mean that it's more valuable.
Yeah.
It does not mean that. We know that things can hold sentimental value, right? A stick could have sentimental value, but just because something costs more does not make it like above the rest, right? Like, getting into, like, I'm sorry, I'm jumping into your world for a second. I might sound a little uneducated. Like, status clothing to me sometimes is so stupid.
It can't. Yeah. You're talking like the Supremes and stuff like
They're
that.
like, Supreme put out a brick. Yeah. Like an actual like rock, like a brick.
Yep.
And people flocked to buy that, and it was going on eBay for like, I think like $500 to $1,000.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
It's wild.
But it's like literally the only reason a brick, I guess, unless you're going to throw it through someone's window, it doesn't really function. I mean, you could put a Supreme brick in your house, I guess. You could build your house with it,
I guess.
But it's like, getting into that practical collector we were talking about, who does that actually serve? It serves the boasters, and it serves the speculators.
Well, it also lines the wallet of the people who painted Supreme on the brick,
Right.
And that's one of those things that, like, to be a little bit, like we've mentioned before, we're pro-capitalism. We get to have and do really awesome things. But there is a part of me that goes, I don't want to be into Jordans because I'm not trying to get the CEO of Nike another vacation home. You know what I mean? And that's obviously, it's I'm contradicting myself because I'm a fan of Adidas, which is also a mega corporation.
And also, some of the shoes you have are status shoes.
Yeah, they are.
Your Yeezys specifically, like if when you wear those in public, you'll get people go,
oh yeah, they recognize what they are for sure.
And not only do you have Yeezys, you have Adidas Yeezys.
Yeah.
So it's like you have,
at some point they're going to start.
You have OG sets of Yeezys.
At some point, spoiler, Kanye's in a little bit of trouble. At some point they're going to start producing Yeezys that aren't tied to Kanye. But those are not the ones that I have.
And you're going to be a very rich man.
I don't know about. Well, see, that's the thing. I have pairs that, even though they have a little bit of wear on them, maybe at some point will be worth something. But that's not what I'm trying to do, I want to wear them, right? I want to Yeah, I want to wear them because I think they look cool, right?
Well, and if you break down the psychology of status, okay, status is usually there for admiration. And admiration is usually there for a couple things, okay? Admiration can result in work. Admiration can result in, furthermore with just work, but like admiration could get you really great opportunities, which could lead to financial freedom.
Sure.
Admiration can get you maybe some more housing opportunities. But above all else, admiration gets you sex. Okay.
I didn't know we were going there. That's
well,
all. Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
More than just sex, interest from in relationships,
Yeah.
the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever.
Yeah.
The thing is that I am interested in you because I admire you. Okay. Not everyone works that way. Some people want to date others that they loathe. I don't want to even think about that.
Yeah.
But the reason your wife married you and you married your wife, it's because you guys admire one another.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So, at this point, you being a married man, very much in love, a dedicated husband,
Yes.
you don't wear shoes to attract the admiration of other women.
Yeah.
Okay. So that
to complicate things even further, I work from home, so I barely even get to wear shoes.
well, but this is my point.
Yeah.
You, even though you're wearing status shoes, at the core of it all, I believe you wear status shoes because they make you feel confident.
Yeah, it's the Deion.
They make you feel good.
It's the Deion Sanders model: look good, feel good, play good. Right, which is why I have 10 pairs of basketball shoes that I rotate
does the body
through.
good.
I want to wear the things that make me feel like, it's this. I'm hopefully at some point I'll be able to dunk a basketball. That's something that I would like to train to be able to do, but I'm never going to jam on anybody.
Got to get some of those Jimmy shoes.
Yeah. I'm never going to jam on anybody, right? I'm never going to get the game-winning three-pointer in an NBA game, maybe in a rec league, but never in an NBA game, right? So I'm not like wearing certain shoes to project a fantasy, but I'm wearing the shoes to feel good in my own arena. And, like I said, like Deion said, look good, feel good, play good. Like I play good. It's like a way of, like I said earlier, I think I feel more comfortable when I have like a more free self-expression, right? And it's not to attract anybody. It's just to put my best foot forward and perform or just exist at the highest level I can for myself. You know what I mean?
Well, the outcomes of confidence are immeasurable.
Totally.
It's like if I wear a certain pair of shoes and those shoes make me feel better in myself, I might just wreck the day in the best way.
Yeah.
Right? I went to this real estate event recently because I was networking and meeting with clients and things like that. And I wore a suit. And Dylan don't play that. Dylan is very much graphic tees. He wears like pants that he rolls up to his ankles, and he wears Adidas soccer shoes. That's what Dylan wears every day. Dylan wears I'm speaking in third person.
Yeah.
Dylan's
getting upset.
Dylan's getting upset. I wear backwards caps. I very much am like, I don't want to say like scummy, but I'm not a flashy dude. Okay. But I wore a suit to this event. Dude, I felt like a monster. I was like talking to people. People were coming up to like, you look great. I really like your necklace and like what you're wearing. Your vest looks great. And I felt so good.
Yeah.
And if I had gone as my normal self, I would have went and like chilled out in the corner because I don't like a lot of human interaction. But I totally get what you're saying. Like the outcomes of feeling confident are crazy.
Yeah.
They're crazy.
Yeah.
And now, again, it's not always about seeking third-party admiration.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just about feeling like your best self.
Uh-huh.
And feeling good about yourself and feeling handsome and capable and smart and whatever the case is, whatever you're trying to convey to the world, something as small as a pair of shoes can go a long way.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that. Like I had grown my hair out, and I've told you this. I had grown my hair out recently for about a year and maybe 3 or 4 months. It was the longest my hair had ever been. And at a certain point,
watch our movies that he's in, you'll see his long hair.
Yeah. In Watch Me and in Man in the Hat, I've got long hair. Right now I don't, right? At a certain point, I looked around and I said, "You know what? Not that I'm not pulling off the long hair. I think it looks okay, but I think that I'm ready for a change." And I went and cut most of it off, right? And I went back to a hairdo that I had been wearing pretty much through college, one that I felt really comfortable in, and it flipped a switch in me, right? I felt more confident. I felt healthier. I felt more myself, right? And that was like such an interesting like social experiment that I did on myself that I didn't realize was going to happen, right? But you're right. Like a pair of shoes or whatever it may be, you know, can lead to a little boost in confidence, you know? It's interesting. Maybe this doesn't apply. Have you ever felt any kind of confidence or like positive uptick in your behavior or your sensibility by getting a piece of your collection? Because yours is shoes.
Mine is very private.
Exactly.
But I will say to myself, it makes me feel confident in the sense that I was able to accomplish that feat.
As in find it and get it.
Find it and get it. And it doesn't have to do with not always cost.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because I don't really buy online.
Yeah.
That takes the fun out of the hunt.
You're right.
Right? So I like to go out and I like to find things in the wild. And the reality of it is like sometimes the confidence for me comes from achieving something.
And the activity of it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, today I get to go thrifting. And that's the fulfillment part of it. It's like,
absolutely, I
get to go do this today.
So I have an interesting question for you. I'm not trying to immediately flip it back to you.
No, it's okay.
I don't speak a lot of controversy in my life. I don't say a lot of things that could be considered divisive. But I want to tell you something that really bothers me about the world.
Okay.
Okay. What bothers me about the world is when people make things their identity.
Sure.
Namely hobbies. Okay.
Yeah.
I am not Dylan, the video game collector. I am not Dylan Hamer, the filmmaker.
Yeah.
Those are just parts of me.
Uh-huh.
There are people that build their whole identity around something, right? Whether that be a hobby or even sometimes down to our political, our ethical beliefs, whatever the case is. Yeah. Sometimes our religious beliefs. My whole makeup, my whole self, my whole identity is X. Like fill in the blank, whatever that thing is. With something like shoes and status things that you wear in public and things that make you feel confident, how do you avoid making that your identity?
Wow, that's really interesting. Because you're right, like there's this new phenomenon that I'm sure a lot of people have seen, the sneaker resale stores in malls, right?
We have like 3 of them in our mall.
In our mall, right? And that's every mall that I go to. So when me and Carrie go on trips together, we always go to a couple malls to shop, and we go to IHOP. Those are like our little traditions. We go to IHOP in every city that we go to. But
is it different?
No, it's not. It's just
IHOP US tour.
That's why it's silly.
Across America.
That's why it's silly, right?
Because when I go to other places, I avoid what's familiar. I want to go to restaurants that I've never heard of or anything. Yeah. You guys are hitting the International House.
The International House of Pancakes in every city that we go to, right? And yeah, we can unpack the psychology.
That in itself is a collection. You're collecting IHOP locations.
Yeah, we can unpack the psychology at another time. But we go to every mall, and not every mall, but we go to a lot of malls, and there's this sneaker resale store in every single one of them. And the guy working the front desk is oftentimes the same guy in every single one, no matter where in the country we're at.
It's his identity.
It's that guy, right? And I'm not going to describe him. If you're listening and you want to picture him, whatever you're picturing is probably correct, right? And I'm not trying to talk smack on these guys. I'm not trying to downplay anybody. But you're right. Like working at that kind of sneaker store or working in a sneaker store, you become very ingrained in a specific niche of society and culture, and you become that way. and I appreciate that you think that I'm not that guy. Not because those guys are bad, but because
That's not who you want to be.
that's just not who I want to be. And I think it boils down to I have been a jack of all trades my whole life, right? I'm not particularly good or exceptionally good at any one thing, right? I have given a try to sports, to music, to, now podcasting. I've given a try to sneaker collecting. I've tried a lot of different things. Not only do I have a big shelf of sneakers in my back room, but I have a corner of my room dedicated to the different things I've tried over the years, right? Different equipment, different machines, different whatever it may be. I've tried a lot of different things, and I'm not exceptionally good at any one of those things, which at certain times in my life has led me to a little bit of an identity crisis. I'm like, what is my thing? But at the same time, I just am too interested in too many things to narrow it, Because if I really wanted to go all in on sneakers, I'd have to give up something else, right? I would have to give up my love of something else. And I don't really...
Maybe trips with Carrie.
Yeah. Well, my marriage comes first, and I'm never going to give that up, right? But maybe I would have to give up my love of going to play basketball 2 or 3 times a week, right? And same thing, I'm not exceptionally good at basketball. I just love going to play, right? I feel like if I wanted to chase the identity of a sneakerhead, I would have to give something up. And I'm not really willing to do that because I like all those things just enough that I want them to be a part of me, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of the way I would answer your question. I'm just trying to be interested in a bunch of different things because they all interest me.
So the reason that something doesn't consume you and become your identity is just because you feel that you would have to sacrifice the other parts of you to fully take on that certain thing or to be engulfed by that thing.
Exactly, right? And, obviously everybody can kind of tell my love of sneakers, my love of basketball. Some of the people that I look up to the most, or maybe not look up to the most, but I end up looking at a lot are high-level athletes, right? And thank goodness they've let the sport consume their life because of them, we get these incredible feats of strength and agility and an entertainment industry.
And shoes.
But I wonder if I, obviously in the body that I have, a semi-chubby white guy, I could never actually reach that level. But I wonder if I even have the mental capacity to dedicate the way that some of those guys have, right? And in order for Michael Jordan to have become Michael Jordan, he had to give something up.
He had to be, he also had to be like somewhat delusional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you kind of have to believe your own crap to keep going.
Exactly. Right. Like we've talked about this before. Dennis Rodman got inducted into the Hall of Fame recently. Right. And if you know anything about Dennis Rodman, he has a very colorful history within the NBA. He's one of the most eccentric and interesting people to ever be in. He's like
a pop figure.
He's so interesting.
Not the toy, but he's like a pop icon.
Exactly. So he got inducted into the Hall of Fame recently, right? And I need to rewatch the entire video. And Dennis Rodman has a very big heart, right? Say what you will about the guy. He's gotten into some messes. His heart is very big. And he's a very emotional man. And you can tell when anytime he shares time and attention with other people, it makes him emotional. So he gets up there and he goes, a lot of people ask me, Dennis, what would you have done differently in your career? And he says, I've done a lot of weird and bad things in my career, but if I could change one thing, I would have been a better father. And he's obviously very emotional. And when I watched it the first time, I got very emotional, right? And obviously I'm not comparing myself to that kind of high-level athlete, but at a certain point, when you hyper-focus on one thing, you have to give something else up. Dennis Rodman, in order to be the best rebounder he could be, arguably one of the best rebounders of all time, and to be able to chase Carmen Electra and all the other stuff he was chasing at the time, he had to give up fatherhood, right? He had to give up being the best husband and father he could be. right? And like I said, I'm not trying to compare myself to that level of dedication, but I'm so interested and so intrigued and so many different things make me happy that I feel like if I wanted to chase a certain aspect too heavily, one of those spinning plates would have to fall over. And I'm not willing to let that plate fall. So for the time being, I'm content with being a jack of all trades, master of none, right? I'm content with not being that good at basketball and not being that good at collecting, because I would have to give something up, you know? And maybe part of me too, sorry to like psychoanalyze myself, maybe part of me is worried that I would give up being a good husband. And I don't want to do that. I'm not willing to do that, right? I'm not willing to chase certain things to the point where I have to give other things up, right? Because there are certain things that are very important to me, and I have to keep those at the very core, right? So that's an interesting turn. Hopefully that's an okay way to say that.
Well, I did ask you a very philosophical question.
Yeah.
So, no, I think you nailed it on the head. Collecting does become people's identity. And in order for us to make something our identity, we have to flush other things away. And I don't think we have time to get into whether that's admirable or a tragedy. Maybe it just depends.
And there are certain people who are only interested in sneakers. You know what I mean? Their wiring is different than mine, right? And sneakers or whatever else it may be, right? There are certain dudes who are like so wired to love sneakers that it's okay for them to pursue it so heavily, right? And there are people who are think about the antique shows on, the dudes who go to these places and they buy stuff from these giant estates, right? Like those guys are built, wired to pursue antiquing as their career, and more power to them for that. I'm just not wired that way. So no shame and no like boo-boo on any of those guys, you know what I mean? But it's just a little different for me, I guess. And that's probably what keeps me back from being like an incredible certain things, But I guess it's okay.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. Yeah, no, that's a very fascinating thought. It's like I would potentially have to sacrifice this thing to get this thing, but I'm also sacrificing not giving this up to keep it around me.
Yeah.
So it's like no matter what way you look at it, it's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, this is a very intense example, but let's say in a weird world, if you sacrificed your marriage, you become the greatest basketball player who ever lived, right?
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's not worth it to you, and it never will be.
Yeah.
But that in itself is also a sacrifice. Because you're sacrificing one thing over the other no matter what.
And there are a lot of dudes, and we've been applying this to collecting, so it's funny that we've gone this way, but there are dudes and ladies, who they go all in on their career, right? They build businesses. They build multi-million, sometimes billion-dollar businesses, but then their marriage is in shambles, right? Because they're spending so much time at the office or whatever it may be that they can't put the time in to, it's Fraser Crane, right? He's so, right?
Bro, I don't know. Lately, I got accused by multiple people of being a workaholic.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah. So, and a workaholic can be admirable. It can be damaging.
But it's sacrifice.
But it can also be exactly what is going on in your life at the time and okay. Right? It's okay. Right? To be hyper dedicated. I don't want anybody to come away with this being like, that dude is anti-dedication, because I'm not. Right? It's just different eras of your life require different things. Right? And at some point, we get to a point where we have multiple things we need to be invested in. And if you want to really invest in certain things, you have to give up others. Right? So figure out what the priorities are. What's the spinning plate that you cannot afford to let drop? Right? Keep that one spinning and then let the others wobble a little bit. You know what I mean? But keep running back and forth between them.
Right. And yeah, that did go deep. For those that lost the plot, I asked Alek, how do you not make something your identity? Because I am personally a little bothered by that. I don't like being around people that have a one-track mind. I realize those people might succeed in that one thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm not a fan of making anything my identity. I just, I'll fight that till the day I die. But collecting it can be very much that.
Yeah.
I've met people that are video game collectors. I've met people that are into fandoms that I'm into, and it's like, God, can you talk about something else? Can we talk about, dude,
We have an episode coming up where we're going to talk about
fandoms? Yeah.
And we'll talk about that, right? Because sports teams, your favorite TV show, your favorite movie, it really can envelop you. And we're not really cut from the cloth that do that, but we're going to talk about it, like some of the psychology of it in another episode. Like you said earlier, we don't want to brag, but I do want to know a couple of things. One, is there a piece of your collection that you're really stoked about? And two, is there a collecting story that you hold like dear, right? So the item, and then if maybe it's the same thing, but the story. Like, is there a collecting story that you're like, man, that was fun?
For me, it actually is the same.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, you know how I was talking earlier about sometimes value doesn't, or sometimes price doesn't equal value? Again, I have some really, really, really like highly sought after games in my collection, especially now because, post pandemic, there's a lot of people in the market that are getting into video game collecting, and that sort of makes it just makes the prices fluctuate. Also, there's been a lot of artificial inflation going on in the video game collecting space. I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to be accused of making like accusations about another company, but there is a company responsible for this. Any video game collector knows exactly.
You'll have to
what
tell
I'm
me
talking
off
about.
air.
Oh, I will.
That's the first time we got to say that.
Yeah, off the record.
Tell me off the record.
So, yeah, I do have things that I'm very proud to have in my collection, but the thing that I love the most cost me, I think, like $55.
Okay.
And you probably know what that thing is. I had a Resident Evil 2 remake exclusive Australian steelbook imported. There's a guy in Australia that my buddy put me in contact with, and he had it sent over to me. And that was cool as it was. I was like, oh, this is a sick like variant. I love the case. It has the very first zombie in the game on the cover. What makes it special is that I reached out to a voice actor named Nick Apostolides, and he plays Leon in the Resident Evil games, at least the new Leon.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to him and I was like, hey, and he wasn't super bombarded or famous at this time, so it was pretty easy to get a hold of him. I was like, hey, what is your convention schedule this year? Because I'd love to meet you and get your autograph or whatever. And he goes, I don't know yet, but let me get back to you when I find out. About 2 months go by, and I had completely forgotten about this. He gets back to me, and he goes, I don't have any conventions coming up, but here's my P.O. box. Why don't you send me your stuff and let me sign it for you? And I was like, oh, wow, that's sick. So I sent him my steelbook. I also sent him a buddies game because like I had another friend who was super into Resident Evil. So I was like, yeah, I'll send it over as well. And I get the stuff back, and on the cover, it says, see you in Raccoon City. Dylan, you're the best. And then he signed Leon Kennedy, and then he signed Nick Apostolides under it. And I was like, damn, that's so cool. But in addition to that, he sent me some really cool, like very like professionally printed glossy photos of Leon. And he signed them with like, he put like survive Dylan, survive. And then he signed his name, and he sent me a couple of those.
He just
over.
went above and beyond for you.
And going full circle, I don't know if I told you this. I actually met him this year or last year.
Was it at FanX?
I met him at FanX in Salt Lake. I went to a convention and I recognized him, and I was like, dude, Nick Apostolides. He's like, yeah. And I told him the story, and he totally remembered. Of course, he was like, dude, yeah, I remember you. And a super nice guy. But, you know, aside from that being one of my favorite games of all time, because again, the original and the remake are tied. I have a very special item that I love linked to someone that's very humble that made me feel really good.
And connected to the art itself.
Yes. So that in my collection is my favorite item. It beats out everything. Like if I had to get rid of everything in my collection, but was able to keep one thing, that's it.
That's slick.
Flipping back to you.
Okay.
Okay. I want to know the same, but I also, we're getting close to the end of the episode here. I want to know what your best thing is and maybe a best story link to it if there is one. And also I want to know what are some of the challenges in the world of sneaker collecting, for example, because I've already talked about, for me, you know, I've talked about a little bit of my psychology. There's space, there's money, and also speculators. I don't give them my money, but is there anything in your world that is an obstacle that you have to overcome when it comes to sneaker collecting? But first, what is your prized possession? Again, you have to get rid of everything but one thing.
But one thing.
I'm adding to that.
Oh my gosh, that makes it so much harder.
But it's fun, isn't it? You don't have to go that route if you don't want to. But either way, so what is your prized collection or prized possession? And what are some of the obstacles that sneaker heads have to overcome? I got sneakers on my head, but don't call me a sneakerhead.
Okay. So in the past couple years, I've realized getting sneakers and giving sneakers provide the same level of satisfaction.
You've given me sneakers.
I've given you sneakers. I have a twin brother and sister who are 15 right now, and they're both into basketball. And getting them hooked up with sneakers is like the most fun thing I can do, right? They're also in the last couple of years gone through some tough things, and there was a moment where I was able to give my little sister a pair of basketball shoes that she ended up wearing through her season, right? And this is not answering your question, but what I'm essentially trying to say is I would get rid of my whole collection if I could keep the chance to give her those sneakers and other people the sneakers that they want. And not trying to do this to glorify. I'm definitely not trying
leave it to you to wrap this up with a heartfelt.
That's not what I'm trying to do. Man,
you're just a big old warm ball of cheese.
But being able to like order that pair of shoes for her, right, and give them to her when we as a family were going through something really tough was like really important to me, right? And that's like the long and non-answer to it. I don't know if I can give you like a direct answer to which pair I would keep a hold of.
It's okay. To be fair, mine was sort of a sentimental story.
So I still have another story. Like, you know, what's my prized possession? What's the cool story? So let me tell you the other cool story, right? And I'll just say it's these two pairs, right? When I was in college, I was getting into collecting sneakers, right? And I was only really able to, I would get like pairs from Ross every now and then, but then I treated myself to one pair of like new hoop shoes on my birthday, right? And I did that for 2 or 3 years. I think it was my senior year, so I was about to be done with college, and there was 2 pairs that I really wanted, right? I wanted to get the new Russell Westbrook Jordans, and I wanted to get, this was when Avengers Infinity War had come out, and Adidas had come out with a exclusive line of Avengers hoop shoes.
You were in college when Infinity War came out?
Yep.
What?
Yeah. I was in college from 2016 to 2019.
Oh, I forgot. Sorry. I totally forgot that you came back and went to college. Cause after high school, you were out for a while.
Yeah, I did my freshman year, and then I went on basically a study abroad religious trip, and then I came back, right?
That makes sense.
So my main chunk of college was in 2016 and 2019. So this would have been probably 2018 when Infinity War came out. I think that's when it came out. So they came out with a pair of Black Panther Damian Lillard shoes. They came out with a pair of Thor Marquee Boosts. They came out with a pair of Nick Fury T-Max. And then there was a Captain Marvel pair. And then there was a Captain America Next Level basketball shoes. Captain America, probably still my favorite. And they were like this brand new kind of slip-on basketball shoes, no laces. And they were like the new cool thing. So I was torn. I was like, which pair do I buy, right? I get to buy either. Arguably, I know I'm going to like the Westbrooks better because they're like, they're like built for basketball. These other ones are basketball shoes as well, but they're kind of like, they're laceless. Are they going to really perform? But if I don't get them now, I'm going to miss out on it because there's no way that the Captain America ones are going to stick around very long. It's like an exclusive, right? So which one do I get? So I had like my money saved up to get myself my pair of birthday basketball shoes. And I remember I like got some lunch up at the student center. I walk out and there's like this big staircase that leads down into like the main foyer area of campus. And then that's where I took like my path to walk back to my apartment. So I'm looking down this stair step and I get a call. This is like a couple of days before, if not the day of my birthday. I get a call and it's my mom. And I pick up. She says, "Hey, happy birthday. Hope you're having a great day. What are you and Carrie going to do this weekend?" Me and Carrie were dating at the time still. And it was before we got married. And she's like, "What are you guys going to do this weekend? What are you going to do?" And I was like, "I think we're going to go do this and this." She says, "Hey, I put $100 in your account so that you can get yourself a pair of shoes for your birthday." Right? So pick whatever pair you want. It's on me. That's my birthday gift to you. And I like got off. I like told her, I was like, "Hey, there's actually 2 pairs that I want and I can afford to get both of them now." And she was so excited. She was like, "Good, perfect. Get them both. You should get them both. Go treat yourself. It's your birthday." And it was just like this beautiful like conversation I had with my mom where she enabled me to get both pairs. Right. And the sun was shining. It was really pretty. It was spring. Everything was blooming. I don't know. I just have like a very like vivid memory of that phone call with my mom. And I was able to order both pairs. And so if I had to get rid of everything, I would just keep those 2 pairs. The Russell Westbrook Why Not 02s and the Captain America Next Level ones. There's the story for that one.
There's a story. You're welcome.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
So follow-up question again is like, what are some of the challenges of sneaker collecting?
The biggest challenge for me, right? And it's a little bit easier on me because I'm not trying to get the most sought after shoes, right? I'm not chasing the Jordans and those ones that resell for really, really. So cost is not really like a challenge for me because I'm not going after those like high level ones. Dude, the biggest challenge of being a sneakerhead for me is that I work from home and I don't get to wear sneakers very often. Like the most variety I have to sneakers is playing basketball, right? I like rotate through my basketball shoes. But I have other sneakers that I would like to wear out, but I don't have an office to go to every day. So I don't have a chance to like rotate and have cool sneakers on the daily.
And kind of like you said, also maybe like beating bots and stuff to certain launches of something in the past.
Yeah. I like you mentioned earlier, you've kind of slowed down a little bit. I've kind of slowed down a little bit lately.
But you used to do the drops.
I used to try to do the drops. Now it's more about like, okay, a new pair of basketball shoes came out. I like those. And what am I going to find at the outlet? Right? When me and Carrie go on one of our trips, what cool thing am I like going to find at the outlet that I would have never guessed I would find? And that's what I get. You know what I mean? I don't really chase the releases as much as I used to anymore, if at all. So my biggest challenge is I don't have as many opportunities to wear my shoes as I would like. And I really wish I did.
I don't have as many opportunities to take my things out.
Your toys?
My toys out and play with them in the sandbox.
Yeah.
No.
What is that? What do you think your biggest challenge would be?
Well,
space. So I have a space issue, right? I have a bunch of cubbies and I've already filled all my cubbies because I don't want to like put them away. I want to display them. Like you said, they're in my office. So when I'm on a Zoom meeting at work, my shoes are behind me and I've run out of space to put them up.
I'm out of space.
Yeah.
I am out of space. Like there's no. So I'm hoping to be buying like a new house soon. And I'd like to, or buying a house rather. And I would really like to I don't know though, because I sort of like the psychology change up that's come with me slowing down. I like it
Yeah.
because anything in healthy bursts is just a lot more special. When you have access to anything and everything you could ever desire and nothing is a factor, those don't hold as much weight. If you had the money to buy both those pairs of shoes, you wouldn't have that beautiful memory with your mom.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like those things are necessary, and sometimes we have to put those restrictions on ourselves. So when it comes to, especially if you have the means, just because you have the means doesn't mean you have to. You don't have to indulge. You don't have to go out and get everything you've ever wanted. Keep something special, keep it a treat. And, that's why I say I don't buy online, because
because then it'd be unlimited.
I would get everything I ever wanted, whereas like if I go out and I'm in a different state or something and I stop by a video game shop and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's DuckTales for Nintendo Entertainment System, and then I picked up DuckTales at one point or something. It's like, oh, or that's Metal Storm or like whatever game on the NES, SNES, whatever console, right? It's like, and also just understanding, like I said before, and reminding myself that price doesn't always mean value.
Yeah.
That could sway the other way. Something can cost $2 and that means we assume it's not very good. Or something can cost $500 and we assume it's the best. It's like, do your due diligence, do your research, and make sure that something is going to be worth it, right?
Yeah.
It's not as big of a deal as like spending $2 on a movie, because like I said, whatever. But I don't know, just making sure that I'm putting those restrictions on myself and, having a healthy balance in life and not overdoing it, because I've already overdone it. I've had to sell off some of my collection. I've sold some. I used to, bro, you didn't even know this, but I used to have like a crap ton of Legos in my closet.
Yeah.
I had so many Legos.
Dude, Legos, to anybody who collects Legos, that seems like a slippery slope, man.
It's also like one of the most expensive hobbies.
I've bought in a couple Lego sets and putting them together. You're like, man, I got to go get the next one. It's so fun.
Yeah, it's like I need to complete the set, but the reality, Legos are so expensive. But I had unopened boxes of like Star Wars Legos. Like I had like tons of them, and I went and sold them because I'm like, I'm not enjoying these. And also, of course, just speculators, but that mainly affects new stuff. Retro collecting, speculators don't really come into play unless something is weirdly desired. But new stuff comes out. That's where speculators always live. They live in the new. They do sometimes exist in the old again if something people want it. But most times it's like, oh, you're not going to get a PS5 for a while, or oh, you're not going to get the NES or SNES Classic, or whatever the case is. It's just like, and those people exist in every facet of collecting. But that's my biggest obstacle. And I'm so thankful that those obstacles exist. Because that has allowed me to become what I call a healthy collector. And it sounds like it's very similar for you too.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Yep. I have one question for you, and I think I have my answer too if you spring it back on me.
I will.
Okay. Healthy collecting, right? And just as with the video game episode, we finished on what's the trajectory. Maybe I can ask you a question about the trajectory of your collecting. And the question is there a holy grail item that you really want and you want, but you're holding out on getting it? And you could even get it if you wanted to, but you're holding out on getting it until you like a certain era of your life hits, or you're just hoping that you come across it in the wild, right? Like there's a pair of shoes that I would really like to get one day. And even though I could technically afford them and get them now, I'm like waiting so that chaser still exists in my collecting journey. Is there an item like that for you?
There's a lot of them.
Okay, I want to hear them.
It's mostly some of those like really weird, obscure PS2 horror games. Like I would really like to get Rule of Rose someday. And that's like the problem is that I didn't pull the trigger on it when I was impulsive, and now it's a $700 game.
Whew.
So, and I actually went to a
How much could you have gotten it for at the time?
I probably could have, if I had pulled the trigger on it, like the opportunities that I had in the past, probably like $300.
Okay, so
maybe
it's over doubled since then.
Yes, and I was at a toy expo. I think it was last year. It was when I met.
Oh yeah, you met Jason the Red Ranger.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Austin St. John, I believe his name is.
Okay.
But I was there, and a really good friend of mine, his name's Luke. He owns a video game store called 8-Bit Games out in Nampa.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely go check him out. I don't know, he's got the coolest stuff, but he's also just the nicest guy on the planet. He had Rule of Rose on PS2 for sale, and I think it was like $500, and I had the cash on me, and I was like, oh no. But then again, that rewired mentality came in, and it's like, Dylan, do you need this badly? Why? Because, bro, I've never played it. I don't even know if it's good. Like, I might emulate it someday.
What is it that makes it so exclusive?
Because
not every PlayStation game gets that kind of value later on.
I mean, it's the typical stuff. It comes down to the pressing quantity. How many copies were pressed? It was a very limited run.
It's like true exclusivity.
Yes.
Okay.
There's not a lot.
Not fabricated.
No, there's not a lot of them in the wild. But I've never emulated it, and I don't know if it's any good. I've never played Rule of Rose, but a lot of people in the community talk about it. And I was like, oh, that would be a cool one. And then, of course, there's just like weird stuff. Like, I would like to get the like Japanese Game Boy copy of like Resident Evil Gaiden, or I don't know. I have most of the things I'd want, but yeah, I guess just some of those obscure kind of PS2 horror titles, maybe some PS1 horror titles. And then I don't know, movies are so easy, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I have I don't think I have like a movie item that I'm like chasing. Even like VHS, they're going up because weirdly they're valuable nowadays, but
I know there's a movie that you want that you can't get because they didn't make it, and they should make it.
Like a Blu-ray copy?
Yeah.
Goofy movie?
Yep.
Yeah, Goofy movie doesn't have a Blu-ray release, but I have the DVD.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to have on Blu-ray.
That's the one you would pull the trigger on.
Disney. I think they do have it on Blu-ray, but it's part of like a little pack. And I don't want that. I want an exclusive Goofy movie Blu-ray.
Is it like Goofy movie and Extremely Goofy movie?
I think so.
You want it solo.
I want it by itself. I don't know why. Again, we're getting into the mental illness of collecting. I don't really buy packs that often.
Yeah.
I like to buy individual items.
Yeah.
But what about you? Is there like is it a type of Yeezy, or like what is it?
No, it's and like I said, I don't know what I'm waiting for in my life, because I could go on eBay and find it and it wouldn't like break my bank or anything. I'm just like waiting for like I said, it's like a holy grail, and I'm just like not ready to get my holy grail yet. I'm just like not far. You know, it's so strange. But the specific pair of shoes is the Nike Up Tempos, the Airs. And you can get them at Foot Locker, but not in the specific colorway that I want. It's the pair of shoes that George of the Jungle wears when he ships. You remember in the movie
Brendan Fraser, George of the Jungle?
Yep. He ships himself in a crate back to Africa, and then he puts on a pair of Nike Up Tempos.
Were they white?
They were black with the black lettering and the white outlining on the black lettering.
I don't remember that. I also haven't seen that movie.
Because there's pairs that have black with white lettering, but I want the black on black with the white outline. It's like a very specific, it's the ones that he wore. And it's a pair that like Scottie Pippen wore back in the day when he was playing with Michael. But yeah, that's a pair, and it's solely because of that movie, because that movie is one of those nostalgia movies that I really love with Brendan Fraser, and I'm like, I want the pair that George wore when he was running back into the jungle to take care of business. And like I said, I could probably find it on eBay. I could probably get it. It wouldn't break my bank, but I don't know. I just am holding off on getting that pair for some reason.
Why am I imagining that the bottoms of the shoes were missing?
like in the movie.
Yeah, that's so weird. Maybe I'm thinking of something else, but like I just imagine like
He cut the bottom off so that he could still
be barefoot.
That would defeat the purpose of the shoe.
I know, but that would be really funny. They should have done that.
It would be, or like they show him get to his part of the jungle and then he lifts them up and they're all worn off. That'd be funny too. But yeah, he puts on that pair, and then Brendan Fraser in all his glory just like runs back into the jungle to go take care of his home. And I love that movie, and I think those shoes are cool. At some point, I'll get a pair of them.
Wow. Wrapping this up with a George of the Jungle starring Brendan Fraser reference. Awesome. Well, it was really nice to learn about, personally, my favorite part of this episode was just hearing about the mentality. Again, me asking you kind of like the identity question, and, you talking about the things you have to give up. And I think that's such an interesting thing. Some people do podcasts or videos about their collections, but very few people actually talk about like the psychology of collecting. And we've covered our bases here. I think we talked about why we love collecting, surrounding ourselves with the things we love, maybe having a period in our life where our freedom might have overtaken us, and then now tapering to make sure that we have a healthy balance and being those healthy collectors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely got into some stuff I didn't think we were going to cover, but
that's awesome.
That's kind of the point of it.
Kind of put you on the spot, huh? But yeah, if you want to get in touch with us and talk about collecting or the podcast at all, you can follow me on Instagram at Dylan Hamer, and
yeah, I'm at AJetzel.
Yeah. So feel free to shoot us any questions or ideas for the podcast or anything really. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear it. But I had a good time here today. This is episode 5.
Yep.
Holy moly.
Getting through it.
We're about halfway through. Next episode is halfway.
Yep.
And we still have some incredible topics left.
We're going to have a bunch of fun in the next few ones too.
But we're going to double our fun with double mint gum.
Double your pleasure, double your fun.
Remember that? What was that? Chris Brown?
That was Chris Brown. Yeah.
Double your fun.
Yeah. That was the Forever. It was the one that. The Jim and Pam wedding.
It's like I waited my whole life for this one night. Double your fun with double mint gum. Like that shit.
Yeah, man.
Great. Thanks for listening to episode 5 of the Very Refreshing Podcast. We appreciate all the support so far, and we hope you continue listening. We will see you next week, or I don't know. We're not going to see anybody, but you'll listen to us next week if you want. But yeah, we'll be here same time, same place next week. We're signing off. Any final words, Alek?
Nope. See you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
See you guys.
Thank you for checking out the Very Refreshing Podcast. Subscribe for more content just like this.